Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds, and with me today is a man who started his BMX career on the East Coast, eventually migrated out to the West Coast, where he enjoyed a very respectful pro career. I think one of the first and only BMX racers to actually have a shoe named after him. And what's even more important, or impressive, I should say, is what he's done after his career. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Alan Foster. Alan, how are you today?
Thanks a lot for having me, Craig. Great to hear from you.
You know what, man? I don't remember a time in my career that you weren't around. After the BMX action spread, after that, I was like, oh, there's Alan right there. Like, that was like my intro to you. Were you around for Wheel Power at that time, I think?
Wheel Power, that was 88? No, 87?
87,
no,
maybe?
86.
Was it?
What?
It was 86. Yeah, because then, yeah, for sure. Because it was after the Worlds that year. Did you race the Worlds that year in Orlando?
I was not a Worlds guy. No, I was not a Worlds guy. Was never on my radar. And kicking back now, 87 Orlando, I didn't even go. I was like, what's that? It's not a War of Stars. Like, why would you go to that? Like,
right.
I didn't know anything about it.
See, I was riding for MCS at that time, and I didn't know what the Worlds were. I was just like, yeah, it's another race that we're going to. It's going to end our summer tour. Alan, the first moto, I'm looking across at people at the gate. I don't know anybody. I'm like, oh, I'm going to crush these dudes. I got seventh. Straight up. Seventh place.
Yeah.
From dudes that, I don't know where they were from, but they were all really, really fast. And I'm like, oh, you're going to have to button this up. And then I won the next two motos. But it was another intro into different things. So talk to me about the introduction for you into BMX, because you and your brothers were motocross guys initially.
We're kind of like, we rode motorcycles kind of after school on the weekends. We had trails, had woods in the back, and we'd go ride bikes, ride motorcycles, whatever. So it's just what we did. It's just, whether you're playing the dirt, whether you're playing, we had decent property, but the woods and the endless trails that went forever and ever. Then,
and this is in Maryland, correct?
This is in Elkton, Maryland. Yep.
Where
right
is
on
Elkton,
the border
Maryland?
of Newark, Delaware, Elkton, Maryland. And then, neighborhood kids one day, they said something about going to a race, and that was, what's this? What is BMX racing? So we didn't go to soccer one weekend, and we went to a race, and that was it.
Where was the track? 81. That was the year. Yeah.
Lums Pond and was the track in Newark, Delaware.
How did you do?
I did win, but the good story was my mom only went. Brian didn't go. And I think
for those of you that don't know, that aren't in the mix, Brian Foster is Alan's brother, who makes up the second half of the Foster brothers shoe, and just when there's one, there's the other, inseparable to a degree. But that needed to be said, obviously.
Big part of it. Yeah, big part of it for sure. So the first moto was like I went in the first, it started to rain, went in the first turn and slid out and crashed. And I was like, so then I went back to the car, and of course I had an extra wheel with a knobby tire on the back. So I put a knobby tire on the back, and then I think my chain fell off because the coaster brake, and my chain fell off. And then I won the third moto, and somehow that made the main, and then I won the main. But those are my memories of being a kid, being an 11-year-old kid, changing my wheel and changing my tires, and could have only been 4 or 5 people there on the gate, but that was it. That was 11 beginner, and then it grew and grew and grew and grew.
Yeah, I always pictured you as a very calculated racer, and I could see you going back and going, we need to change the tire because I need more grip, or whatever the case may be. I always knew when I was on the track with you, if I was in front of you, that I had to have my defense on, because you were going to dive in a turn, or you were going to set me up some way, somehow. There's a few riders like you, Eric Carter, Billy Aw. If someone, Mike King, if you were in front of you guys, it was like, you better pay attention to back there as well as in front. And that was something that I always respected about you, because you always did it really clean as well. I don't think you've ever put me over a turn, or knocked anyone down deliberately.
I'm glad that never happened. I did get into
Me
some
too.
things with people, whether it's what you're genetically born with, whether it's who you are, but my starts are terrible and always coming from the back, always, always, always. And I got sticky situations sometimes, but it was more of like just who's going to shut down before that turn. And a lot of the times you're racing the guy in fourth, and the guy in second is just happens to be the sitting duck because you're racing that guy for third, fourth, and the guy in second who's sitting in the turn. So it was never malicious, but things happened. Things
But
happened.
it's racing. Let's face it. BMX is a contact sport. Someone's going to hit you. You're going to get knocked down. Charles Townsend,
Yeah.
someone I love dearly, knocked me down more than anybody else in our sport. Like, put me over a turn just for no reason at all. But that's what we did, and I deserved it because I left the door open or I did something wrong and gave him that opportunity. So it's part of the deal, you know?
Yeah. I mean,
So,
BMX has so many great memories, so many. Going back now, whether I'm driving somewhere on vacation or whether you're visiting some friends, you're like, I remember that exit, or I remember that town, or so and so
yeah.
lives here, or so and so lives here. Like we drove to San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and just driving up there, you just, oh, that's Stumphauser's local area. That's the Garcia's local area. It
Right.
was just so, I mean, it's how many, 30, 25 years later, and that's still in my mind. That's how much BMX impacts many, many of us.
Labor Day weekend, I'm always antsy. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, we'd be at the NBL Grands right now. Christmas, always like, what are we doing? Like, I got to pack because I got to go to the Christmas Classic. It's really
Thanksgiving,
interesting.
July 4th. I mean, out west, Memorial Day, Labor Day, all that.
Yes, Winter Nationals at some point, right? In the winter, like that's in our energy and it's never going to go away. I had this conversation with Barry McManus once. He's like, Craig, I'm on my road bike rides right around Labor Day. He's like, I'm so strong right now. And we're like, dude, right now we'd be primed for the NBL Grands right now. So your body is conditioned to be at its best right now.
Yeah.
So that's probably why you're so strong right now. He's like, you know what? It's probably right.
And that was 25 years ago.
Yeah, it was 25 years ago. So you grew up in Maryland. You guys spent a lot of your time on the East Coast. And then at some point you made a transition out to California. Yeah. What was that all about? Who got you there?
So it was
and
really
what a change that was.
Yeah. A guy named Dave Clymer. So I guess back up, I graduated high school, my first semester of college, but I wasn't into it. I was writing down bike lists on my notepad. It was never into it. And a friend of mine, Dave Clymer, who we rode local trails with, or the local tracks with, or I don't think we really rode that many trails back then, but it was like after the race, you go session the first jump, or you whatever. Clymer was always around for that. And then he was gonna go race that Irvine Cup series. Was there like it was like a 3-round series maybe, and he had won the first one maybe. I'm not sure if that was part of that series or not, but it was Irvine, California, this World Cup thing. And I'm going after the Christmas Classic, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? I'll go with you. So it would have been 8. I was 17, not 18 yet. And we raced the Christmas Classic. And then I was in my Toyota truck. He was in his Dodge minivan, and we drove across country. And I was just going for that January, that off semester, that month off. And then you're going to start the semester back
the
up.
Month off. Yeah, the 1 month off that we kind of had.
Yeah. And that was it, man. That was however many years ago that was. And then when I got to California, that race, I don't know, Rennie Roker or somebody took the money and took off. So that race never happened.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah. So we went and rode that track afterwards, but that race never happened. I guess the second or the third of the series never happened. And then I ruptured my spleen when I was out there. So I flew back to Maryland, rehab from that for a month. And I was like, well, I didn't get to experience California enough. Let me go out. Let me just take the rest of the semester off, and I'll start next semester. And then that's it. That's all she wrote.
And the next semester, and then I'll do the next semester. Yeah, I know that.
Exactly. Every
Yeah.
summer I'd come back. So what are you doing? I said, well, I'm still give this a go. Let me still this a go. This is fun. This is fun. So it was never, I never moved to have a career. I never moved. You and I talked a little bit about this. I feel like I'm a follower. Like I was just following Dave Clymer. Like Dave Clymer was going to California, and him and Chris Muller and I got a place together. And actually we stayed on Chris Muller's mom's couch, in Huntington Beach, and that's
Wow.
kind of where it started. But I was just following him. I was just doing what he was doing, and whether it was trails, whether it was tracks, I was just following what he was doing. I think I kind of see myself in life doing that a lot. I just follow, and then if I really get into it, then I'll take it. Then I'll take it and own it and execute it, or however you want to say it.
Right.
So it's your show is about influencers, right? Influencers and what
Absolutely.
how they helped you get somewhere. But it was just me as a kid following Dave Clymer around the country, and then that just grew and grew and grew and grew. So,
Well, it grew into a very respectable career. People would kill to have the career you had. I mean, you got to travel the country and the globe. You had some great sponsors. You got to see some really incredible things. You had a very solid finishes and rankings. Made a bunch of money. I mean, it was great, right? So whatever you think that you were a follower, I never saw you as that, and I highly doubt anyone else saw that either. But it's awesome that you know that you had an influence in Dave Clymer, who was trendsetter. Like you would never look at Dave Clymer on the gate and think that dude's going to win this race. Short dude,
yeah.
twitchy fast, dreads, wild looking helmet. You've got everyone else on the gate that's all primed and riding for the firm, and Clymer snaps them all. Like,
Yeah.
amazing. Like original dude right there. Just marched to the beat of his own drummer for sure.
He probably had Chicago bars and purple pants and
He did.
spiked hair.
Absolutely. Yes, he did. Yes. That was awesome. So at what point then you're in California, and I don't know if Brian's made it out there or not, but do you realize, all right, look, I'm going to make a go at this. This is my career, and I'm going to continue on what I'm doing.
Yeah, so I was working at a bike shop, and we lived in a big house called the POW house with a bunch of guys. We crowded 8-10 people in a 4-bedroom house. And
the POW house is a legendary house amongst the BMX world. And if you lived out there for a little bit of time, you were considered one of the pros of Westminster, and people aspired to live there. It was quite interesting.
So it was just a dirty house, just because, whether that's college life or whatever, it's just, I think it started out with maybe 6 of us or something, couple would share bedrooms, and then 2 people paid for their own room. But as just over time, you add one more person, rent gets that much cheaper. You add one more person, rent gets that much cheaper. Like, why wouldn't you do that? And everybody rode bikes, and it was just, so it turned into this house. I think average probably around 10-ish people. But we all loved riding bikes, and we'd go to the track and we'd go to the trails, and it was living. But it was a long time before I decided, or I thought that it could be a career. Really, you're just doing your thing, making $2,000 a year or whatever it was. And then I got the phone call from a guy, Kim Boyle at Airwalk. And that was when it started. That's really when it started. That was 93.
Really?
And once that salary started, we'll give you X a month and a rental car and a hotel and everything. You're like, what? That's the first time I'd really been in a rental car. It was 93. It was the first time I was even in a rental car. And that's one of those fortunate things in life. Did it just line up? Did the stars just align? Because I was a pro guy, so turned AA, got smoked, turned back to A pro. So I was really, the results weren't there. That Del Mar 93, which was January 93, where I won. That was my first win in AA. That's just one of those things where the stars aligned. It just worked. Whether I was feeling good that weekend, it was actually a really crappy soft track, flat first turn, and I kept sneaking people around the inside, and that was it. That's just how it worked, And every time I'd go in the first turn, what are you dudes doing out there? Just sneak on the inside.
Right.
And then it just happened to be that this Airwalk shoe company was starting a gig, and I knew Kim Boyle because he worked at GT in Huntington Beach, and we rode street together. So we had a relationship before that. And then he's like, well, what if we do this? I'm like, heck yeah. And still, it wasn't a career. I just felt this lucky guy that I was getting paid a little bit to make to ride bikes. And then it started going into the Schwinn comes in and other companies come in, and you're starting to wheel and deal. Hey, ODI, can you pay me this much a month? Hey, UGP, can you pay this me? It's just, and then it's like, I'm making money. And then when it becomes a career. Now you're chasing points and you're trying to be in the top 10 and trying to be in the top 20, whatever it may be, But so
it turns into a job kind of, right?
Yeah, I don't know when that switch flipped, when it becomes a career. It's still just doing what you're doing. But then at some point when you're racing 32 weekends a year, you're getting on the planes and then it's like, this is a job. Like, this is a job.
Mm-hmm. That got tiring. I'll admit it. And as fortunate as I feel that we were and are, it got tiring. Like it was exhausting. Like you break your body down week after week after week and you don't recover. It was hard. It was challenging.
You don't want to think that it has a lot to do with it, but success, how you did is what kept you going. Like if you got in a rut and you win a couple weekends with some bad finishes, it starts wearing on you, And then later in life, when you're married and you're leaving your wife, you go into a race, you're getting motoed, you're getting semi'd, whatever. You're coming back with, $150 semi money in your pocket. You're like, what am I doing here? But if you take a step back, then you have those where you get a couple rolls in a row. And even if you're going to terrible Pine Bluff, Arkansas, or sorry if you're from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, but some of those races, when you're in the winter time, it's Wichita, Kansas one weekend, and then 2 weeks later, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and then 2 weeks later, Sedalia, Missouri. And you're like, this kid from Huntington Beach, and you're like, what am I doing? But if you're making a couple grand sometimes a weekend, it was, and like Craig, you and I and Frank Nuccio and Brian and Richardson, we'd go out bowling, right? On a Saturday night in between these races. I remember, was it Pine Bluff? There's like 7 dudes and we're all buddies, right? We're going bowling on the weekend, except for Purse. Purse was off doing his own thing.
He was never doing, he was never part of the whole program ever.
Hayden and all that. I remember, it was like, I don't know, 2 Airwalk guys, 2 balance guys, you and like one of us, I think 8 guys, 7 make the main. Is like, damn, one of us ain't gonna make it tomorrow. But those are the easy ones. That was the easy life, and those are good times. We make good money, and then you go to the big races, and those long days. Remember, like Black Mountain and those NorCal races, and you're there at 10 at night. You're doing, Carl's Jr. drive-through because that's the only thing that's open after the third main. And
Ontario, dude, Ontario. I remember getting back to the hotel at 1 o'clock, having to be up at 5 to get back to the track.
Yeah,
that was a time when I'm like, dude, I'm done with this. I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
So, and then and then you go to the races and you're there to sign autographs or you're there to do things, but it's still, in the end, let's take a step back and think how fun that was.
Oh my gosh,
we could complain about it at the time. Somebody, McPherson cut me off out of the gate, or whether it's muddy, or I'm pissed because I found out that ATI is paying somebody more than I'm getting at ODI, and whatever. But that was a good time, and I roughly had a 10-year career, and I'm fortunate. I'm absolutely fortunate that happened, and it helps me do what I do today. Like so many things I can relate back to. I think I learned from that lifespan of BMX.
So let's get to today. When I first heard that you had made a purchase of some real estate, I thought to myself, you can buy a school? It never even occurred to me to buy a school. And it just didn't make. I didn't know. It's something that I'd never thought of. So how did that come about? Because that was fascinating to me. I'm like, wait, he bought a school? How do you buy a school? Like,
Yeah.
how does that work?
So they're preschools. We have two preschools now, and they started with my wife who's from Brazil. She came here.
Also a
She works as a
fascinating
bartender.
story, by the way. Love that story to the nth degree. One of my favorite stories of you of all time. Maybe we'll save them for another show, but love that
Yeah,
story.
yeah. So she was a little girl from Brazil who didn't know much English, and she worked as a bartender, and she worked at Burger King and did some stuff. And one of the things came up, she was gonna could be an assistant at a preschool, local preschool. She liked kids. Okay, she's gonna work with these kids, and the kids would just wreck her every day. I mean, just run her around. I don't know what age classroom she was in, twos or threes. And she took a class one time, and she learned, some tricks I'll call it to for classroom management. And then so, oh, this is good. I can do this. I can do this. And then she was an assistant teacher, and then she was a teacher, and then she was a director. And then as she kept growing up, kind of the next thing was to become an owner.
Wow. Okay.
And we were making some money. I was making some money doing the BMX thing, and that was kind of getting towards the end of that. And she came up with the idea, hey, there's this preschool for sale. Let's buy it. And I'm like, you're crazy. You're crazy, crazy. And
she's amazing, dude. I love her. She's so cool.
And that's kind of the thing that kind of my whole life, it seemed to happen. She'll come up with the ideas and do it. And next thing you know, we own a preschool in Long Beach, and we're running this school. And sad story, her father passed away, so she has got to take off to Brazil, and now I'm left with this school, and I'm talking to parents, and kids are biting each other, and I'm trying to manage it. And that lasted a couple months, and then she came back, and it grew. And then another one comes up a couple years later, and we buy that, and we buy the property this time. And it's a fun. I had no plans of doing this, but I do the books, I do all the the maintenance, all the marketing, websites, whatever you want to do. It's kind of I do it everything, but I like it. I think I almost like it more than her now.
Really?
Yeah. So it's fun. It's good time, and it's different every day, and you're just crossing, fixing, putting out fires right and left, and this whole COVID mess, and it changes the game, and PPP loans and blah 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 blah. But it truly is fun, and I like it. And even without the kids, it's cool. But then now when you go there, they call me Teacher Allen, and they run up to me, and it's a good time. It's a good time.
There's nothing like a little kid running over to you to say hello every time. That's a special thing for sure.
Yeah.
You also have some houses now too, you were telling me. So you're kind of branching out to be this whole real estate mogul.
Yeah, this goes back to my wife, Christiane. She's a pusher. she's a pusher. She's got a lot of ideas in her head, and her brain doesn't stop, and it's always, she sees opportunities. And kind of like, we bought our first house, and when we're moving, she wants to be in this neighborhood because that's the better schools, and it'll work out better. Okay, we'll sell our house, and we'll move up. And she's like, why would you sell your house? Why would we sell our other house? Let's keep that and rent that. And I'm like, man, no way the bank's going to give us money for another house. No way. Tell you what, if you can go convince a bank to give us money, we'll do that plan. We'll rent the other one. And she came back a week later, and that was right in that world, was that like mid 2000s, where banks were just giving money to anybody.
Right.
And so she got lucky with that, and we did it. And then after a while, that house builds up equity. So you got a bunch of equity in that house, and another preschool comes up for sale. Well, we need this, a couple $100,000 to put down. Well, we don't have that. Well, we can refinance that house that we have a bunch of equity in. So we pulled a bunch of money out of that to buy the preschool, and the preschool gets going, and then another opportunity comes up. well, we got a bunch of equity in the preschool. Let's refi the preschool. We'll take all that money and put it down on this threeplex in Huntington Beach or something. And they're like, okay, that's working. Well, let's buy this house in Big Bear, and then, well, the market's shooting up. Okay, let's sell that house in Big Bear. Let's buy a bigger one, and then we'll refinance the other one. It just goes. You just using it, and now we got a lot of properties, and it just
Awesome.
grows and grows and grows and grows.
So it sounds like one of your main influence is Christianity then.
100%, 100%. And like you and I, when we talked about followers, like our influence, I always considered myself as a follower. I'm following Dave Clymer, or I'm following the idea of my wife, or I'm following, but I think I'm a good executor. Like when it comes time to it, okay, if I buy into the project, then I take it and I run with it. And I think I can do an okay managing things. And it works well with her because she will even grab a project. I'll use an example of a refinance that happened. She reads somewhere that rates are down, and she calls a bank and figures out the rates. Okay. And then she gives it to me, and then I go with it. I'll fight her in the beginning. I'll say, no, we can't do it because of this. We can't do it because of this. We can't do it because of this. And then she gets it done, and then I execute it. Okay, you got to do this. You got to prove this, show this paperwork, sign this, all this kind of stuff. And I like that. I like that. Once the ball's rolling, I'll take it and run with it.
Right.
But I'm not a self-starter.
You're not the idea guy, right?
Yeah, she's my self-starter. She's an idea person. And it stresses me out sometimes. All this stuff's going on, and that 08, 09 bubble happened. Like it got a little scary there for a little bit. Like we had really leveraged ourselves right before that, but it worked out. And that's it.
Dude, I love it. That sounds pretty incredible. And how present you have to be able to know when to make those moves and really trust that it's going to happen. Like I think that's a big part of life in general,
And once, if we're fortunate enough to we've got our fingers in a lot of things, and now my theory is, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? If it's a bad move, okay, you're gonna eat some money, or you're gonna do whatever, or eat some time, or eat some stress, or make some ulcers, or whatever you're gonna do. But I think just take a step back, take a breath. When you talk about influencers, like different coworkers I've worked with at different places, watching them, how they act. Like when something comes up, like I worked for Felt Bicycles for a long time. And there was a one guy there. If a problem came up, he'd just look at it. Okay, we can do A, B, or C. Let's do B and go with it. And that's it. No stress. Don't freak out about it. Just do it. Just plug away and it'll happen. So
pretty awesome.
Good stuff.
to feed off of those people as well. I mean, I think we have been around the bike industry, and there's so many different types of people and some very brilliant engineers that we've all had the chance to work with and talk with. Picking up those little tidbits of knowledge and applying them to our lives that's what this show is all about. Who got you there and how did they get you there?
Like you talked about your guy and your Husqvarna lawnmower or whatever. So I hope I'm not influenced by that person who's wearing those jeans or wearing that shirt or that surf, wetsuit or whatever. But it does. But if you walk down the street and you see a guy with a car you like, see a guy with you don't even know him. Man, that looks good, or that looks good, or salesmen are always trying to sell you something, whether they're painting your house or putting a roof on your house or selling you a solar system or whatever it is. They're influencing you, right? And you just have to be who you are and believe, no, I'm into this, or I'm not into this. And just, so there's all these influences that come into your life, and you just got to be the best person you can be and run with it.
Well, on that note, there's no better way to wrap this up, because that was fantastic. It was always a pleasure to spend time with you on and off the track. I always knew I had to get out and get going when I was on the gate with you. And and it's an honor to call you a friend. And I still appreciate you getting me that Home Depot 1-2-3 book when I bought my first house too. Used that thing a whole bunch.
I appreciate it, Craig. These things are great. I've listened to quite a few of them, and it's awesome to hear. Could you put your little story and everything, and everybody relates to their different stories, so it brings up good memories. My memory of you is that white 09 uniform. That's how pro you are in that white 09 uniform. Like maybe white on Saturday and black on Sunday. Like that,
right.
That was pro.
Well, I appreciate that. I used to tell Robbie Miranda that, look good, feel good, do good. So I wanted to make sure that if I was looking good, I was going to get there. The other two steps were going to fall into place. Yes, for sure.
I appreciate everything you're doing.
Well, I'm going to keep doing them because I love doing these things. Please tell your family hello. And I appreciate your time this morning. I know it's super early out there, and go grab some coffee.
You got it.
If you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure that you subscribe here on YouTube as well as on Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the rest of your day. Alan, be good, and I'll talk with you soon, buddy.
Later, Craig.